Welcome to Short Economics. Today we discuss on inflation, its meaning and types. What is inflation? Almost all people have a general idea about inflation because people fear about this economic situation. At the same time, it is a general topic for a discussion in various fields. This term, inflation, is not at all new to people because the society is very much familiar with this situation. They have experienced this situation in recent years and decades. So, what do you think about inflation? What is inflation according to you? In common man's point of view, inflation means a rising price of goods and services. It is correct. At the same time, we have to add something more with this. What we have to add? We have to add the cases of currency or value of currency. If inflation prevails in the economy, the value of the currency will decrease. This is because of the high value of goods and services. So, in general, we can say that inflation means rising prices of goods and services, and at the same time, reducing the value of the currency or money. So, from common man's point of view, inflation is not at all good because they have to pay a higher amount for various goods and services. Inflation is not bad always, during the time of depression especially. If price rises, then it is good for the economy because it shows a sign of a recovery from the depression. So we cannot say that inflation is always bad. It is sometimes it is good too. Once Barbara Houghton said, when six economists are gathered together, seventh opinion will come out. The same way the economists have their own opinion towards various economic concepts. Inflation is not exceptional. According to Professor Colborn, inflation means too much money chases too few goods. So he conveys that if prices of goods and services increase, we have to pay higher amount. And at the same time, we may not be able to buy more goods and services. In short, too much money chases too few goods. According to Friedman, inflation is always and everywhere. It is a monetary phenomenon. This is the another perspective towards inflation. So in short, we can say that inflation is a sustained rise in price of goods and services. Now we have to see the various types of inflation. Types of inflation can be classified based on the speed and based on the government interference. Based on the speed, inflation is divided into four different types. Those are creeping inflation, walking inflation, galloping inflation, and hyperinflation. So these are the four types of inflation based on the speed. So creeping inflation. So creeping inflation is a very mild and a slow. It won't create any problem to economy, and at the same time it is a tonic to underdeveloped or developing countries. The speed of the creeping inflation is less than 3 percentage per annum. So that is all about creeping inflation. So in general we can say that a creeping inflation is a tonic to underdeveloped or developing economies. Okay, it won't create any problem or issues to economy. Then the second type of inflation is based on the speed is walking inflation. Walking inflation is a situation when a creeping inflation gathers momentum. Then it considered as the walking inflation. Even walking inflation is also not a dangerous inflation, but it gives a warning to authorities that they have to be more careful. In your future, inflation will increase more and more. The rate of speed it is in between 3 to 7 percentage per annum. It may reach up to 10 percentage also. So that is a walking inflation. So even walking inflation also is not a dangerous inflation, but it is a warning point to authorities. They have to be more careful about the inflation at this stage. A third type of inflation based on the speed is a galloping inflation. If walking inflation is not controlled properly, it will become a galloping inflation. If galloping inflation prevails in the economy, it will negatively affect the saving and investment projects in the economy. The speed of the galloping inflation is in between 10 to 20 percentage per annum. This kind of inflation really affects the poor and the middle class people negatively, especially. That is about the galloping inflation. So that is all about the galloping inflation. The fourth type of inflation based on the speed is hyperinflation. Fourth type, hyperinflation. So hyperinflation is the final stage of inflation. This happens when a price goes out of control and monetary authorities cannot do anything at this stage. At this stage, inflation rate will be in between 20 percentage to 100 percentage per annum or more. So these are the different types of inflation based on the speed. So hyperinflation is a very severe type of inflation. Monetary authorities won't be able to do anything at this stage. Other types of inflations are open inflation, suppressed inflation, or reflation, slumflation. So the first one is open inflation. So open inflation means the government permits to rise prices of goods and service. Such situations create open inflation. So here government allows to rise the price of goods and services. So that is open inflation. Then the second one is suppressed inflation. So the opposite of open inflation. So here the government imposes monetary and physical measures to control inflation. So here the authorities or the government controls the inflation with the support of monetary and physical methods. So this is the another important type of inflation, suppressed inflation. Then reflation. So if authorities deliberately or purposefully raises the prices of the goods and services in order to increase the economic activities. So that is a reflation, the other important type of inflation, reflation. So here what happens? The authorities purposefully increases the prices of goods and services. The motive behind the rising prices of goods and services is they want to increase the economic activity. And the last type of inflation, that is a slumflation. So this is the last type of inflation. So it conveys the idea that if underdeveloped countries are facing the scarcity of essential goods and services, if underdeveloped countries are facing the problem of or the scarcity of essential good, such a situation is considered as the slumflation. So these are the other types of inflation. What is the very worst situation of inflation? Do you have any idea? So that is stagflation. So what is stagflation? So stagflation means rising the prices of goods and services, and at the same time there will be a higher unemployment. First of all, the rising price of goods and services at a very high, and at the same time unemployment situations prevails. A very high level of unemployment situations prevails in the economy. So this is a very worse situation of inflation. So that is all about this class, and thank you for listening. So thank you.